What does Einstein, Napoleon, and the Vikings have in common? Every one of them has a goofy history. Stick around, because I'm about to take you for a wild ride among the laws that dictate the good old motherland. 1. Despite being a genius, Einstein's driving skills were less than stellar. He was notorious for getting lost while driving and had a tendency to ignore stop signs. His ability to come up with groundbreaking theories was incredible, but when it came to road safety, it seemed he just couldn't relatively figure it out. 2. Some things are just not meant to last. Human teeth do not take into account who they belong to. When they find it appropriate, they simply fall. Just like the dental Legos of American President George Washington. His dentures sparked confusion among people who thought that he had wooden dentures. Thanks to the discoloration of ivory and other materials present in his teeth, to this day, some people believe that he had wooden dentures. 3. Nature has its way of humbling people. Napoleon Bonaparte learned it the hard way. After signing a peace treaty, his chief of staff, Alexandre Berthier, organized a hunt to celebrate the occasion. Berthier obtained over 3,000 rabbits from local farmers. As soon as the rabbits were set free, they jumped on the mighty colonel and his soldiers, who had to run away and hide in his carriage. Rabbits at the end lost interest and scattered away. 4. You must have been high on liquor at some point in your life. Now, consider drowning in this glorious juice. In 1814, an accident occurred at the Moo & Co.'s Horseshoe Brewery. One of the wooden vats of fermenting porter burst, taking away some other containers with it. This caused a flood of high-quality liquor. This must have been a sight to behold. 5. In 1957, the BBC decided to play the world's easiest prank, airing a segment on April Fool's Day about Swiss farmers harvesting spaghetti from trees. Of course, viewers totally bought it and even called in asking for tips on growing their own spaghetti trees. Because who wouldn't think pasta grows on branches, right? 6. Being able to fit in a small place is fun until it is not. In medieval times, chimney brushes used to be small boys, literally. Children were sent into chimneys to scrub them clean until someone realized that using an actual brush was slightly more humane and way less likely to result in lawsuits. 7. Privacy and hygiene were not a matter of concern in every era. Ancient Romans had public toilets with no privacy and shared sponges on sticks for wiping every bottom present. These places also served as a place for community bonding. It must have been nice to share a moment while doing your business. By the way, the useless mug is available for purchase. If you're feeling extra useless, why don't you buy one? 8. Salary and salt sound similar, don't they? This is because in the old days, soldiers were paid in salt, giving us the word salary. The word salary literally means money used to buy salt. Salt was considered so precious that it was traded weight for gold in Western Africa. 9. Humanity's love and obsession for cats is not new. The Mamluk Sultan Al-Zahir Baybars reportedly loved cats so much that stray cats roamed freely in his court, often interrupting meetings. He claimed their presence kept the mice and the stress away. He even left a cat garden in Cairo as waqf. 10. Beginner's luck failed to work for the inventor Abbas ibn Firnas. In the 9th century, he attempted one of history's first gliding flights using a wooden frame with silken feathers. It worked briefly until a painful crash landing, resulting in a broken back, after which he admitted he forgot to design a tail for steering. 11. Animals also had to face trials for their crimes. These trials were taken seriously by the people. They took place in the presence of a lawyer and jury. One famous example is the trial of a sow and her 6 piglets with murder. This particular event took place in medieval France. The owner was just accused of negligence, but the sow faced a death sentence. 12. Transporting a portable calculator took muscle strength in the past. Back in the 1960s, someone thought it was a brilliant idea to call a 10-pound suitcase-sized block of circuits a portable calculator. It also came with straps to be worn like a backpack for convenience. 13. During the 14th century, Europeans were obsessed with Krakows, shoes with absurdly long pointy toes. The richer you were, the longer the toe, some stretched up to 20 inches. Wealthy nobles even had servants to help them walk without tripping over their ridiculous footwear. Nothing says power like needing an assistant to manage your toes. 14. The Mahabharata is an epic you can never finish. With over 100,000 couplets, it's roughly 10 times the length of the Iliad and the Odyssey combined. Good luck to historians who want to understand Hinduism and ancient readers who didn't have bookmarks or weekends long enough to binge read it all. 15. Crossing the trans-Saharan trade route was no picnic. It was surely not like the Arabian Nights they show in Hollywood. This route required crossing some of Earth's hottest, driest, and most desolate terrain. It was a nightmare for the traders carrying salt, gold, and ivory. Yet traders braved it with camels in tow, all while dodging bandits and wishing they were anywhere else, enjoying the glamorous nights associated with the dessert. 16. In Chinese culture, to look beautiful, ladies had to twist their feet. Starting in the Tang Dynasty, Chinese women bound their feet to achieve the coveted lotus foot look, which made walking challenging. This was less beauty is pain and more beauty is a lifelong hobble. Meanwhile, men were like, wow, so graceful, because of course, they weren't the ones doing it. 17. In Hindu culture, stars decide everything. This practice of astrology is so influential, it can even veto love. Parents consult birth charts to match couples, and if the stars don't align, neither do wedding bells. Imagine explaining to your soulmate it's not you, it's Mercury in retrograde. 18. Our favorite baklava topping, the pistachio, is so dramatic that it can spontaneously mysteriously combust if stored improperly. That's right, your innocent snack nuts are basically tiny explosives, just waiting to ruin your pantry and your day. That's why they are often treated as dangerous cargo at sea. Nature clearly has a quirky sense of humor. 19. Caffeine can come from many sources like tea, coffee, and animal dung. Surprised? I was too. But the most expensive coffee in the world is made from beans that have been eaten and pooped out by civets. Yes, humanity looked at animal droppings with half-digested coffee beans and thought, you know what this needs? Hot water. And somehow, this coffee costs more than your monthly rent. 20. The Great Horse Manure Crisis of 1894 was a time when London was drowning in well horse poop, with 50,000 horses working the streets. Experts warned the city would be buried under 9 feet of manure within 50 years. Forget climate change, Victorians thought their apocalypse was a giant citywide compost heap with the authentic smell of progress. Luckily, the automobiles saved the day. 21. In the Middle Ages, blankets weren't just for warmth, instead, they were emergency arms. Soldiers would sleep wrapped in thick wool blankets that doubled as protection against arrows and sudden sword attacks. They probably had to charge into battle looking like a burrito, hoping the enemy's arrows had terrible aim. 22. The Eiffel Tower was once the world's largest billboard. In the 1920s, the Eiffel Tower wasn't just a romantic landmark, it was a giant advertising billboard. A car company paid to have its name plastered across the tower in lights. Imagine visiting the City of Love only to see Paris's crown jewels screaming, "Buy a Ford," in neon. That's what I call a stylish advertisement. 23. Cleopatra might be the queen of ancient Egypt in our imaginations, but plot twist, she lived closer to the moon landing than the building of the Great Pyramid of Giza. That's right, by the time she rolled up, the pyramids were already ancient ruins. So while we picture her lounging around with pharaoh vibes, she was probably more like, wow, nice antiques. Do they come with instructions? 24. Assyrian warriors had their own way of dealing with matters. They weren't just about swords and arrows, they threw bee-filled clay pots at their enemies. Imagine thinking you're in a regular battle and suddenly you're running from a swarm of angry, weaponized bees. Could it be considered chemical warfare? Well, the decision is up to you. 25. At one point, it was illegal to serve ice cream on cherry pie in Kansas. The aim was to preserve the traditionality of cherry pie, a delicacy with a long history in American society. But it seemed as if lawmakers decided pie deserves to shine on its own. People had mixed reactions to the audacity of lawmakers. Which one of these laws did you find the most stupid so far? Let us know in the comments. 26. In 1788, an Austrian general snoozed through an entire battle between his own troops. An Austrian general decided that war was exhausting and promptly got hammered on schnapps before passing out cold. Meanwhile, his troops, in peak military coordination, managed to mistake each other for the enemy and started a full-blown firefight against themselves. By the time the general woke up, thousands were dead. Turks, the actual enemy, hadn't even shown up. Talk about hangover mess-ups. 27. Pigeons were awarded medals and recognized as heroes in World War I. Bizarre though may it sound, but it's the truth. These feathered spies delivered messages across enemy lines. One pigeon, named Cher Ami, was even awarded a medal for saving a battalion. Imagine risking your life in war only to have the hero of the day be a bird with better job performance than most humans. 28. During the Cold War, the KGB took the concept of covert weapons to a whole new level with their kiss of death. This lethal weapon looked like an ordinary tube of lipstick, but was packed with stylistic terror. It had a 4.5mm bullet ready to be fired at a single click. It was a weapon blending intelligentsia and fashion in a lethal way. 29. The founding father of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, once received a pair of ferocious grizzly bears as a gift from an explorer friend, Zebulon Pike. Why not? Presidents can have man-eating fur balls in their backyard. They look presidential to me. He cages them up, probably hoping they'll just look presidential, and thus, the first official White House animal crisis was born. 30. Corsets in the Victorian era made fainting look like a sport. Were they fashionable? Yes. But were they comfortable? Not so much. Women were habitual of squeezing themselves so tight in the dress that they would faint from lack of breath. But hey, who needs air when you can squeeze your ribs into an hourglass shape that'd make a sand timer jealous? 31. During World War II, when metal was scarce, some cars were made with wooden frame. They were durable, but a major fire hazard too. And the best part is cruising down the road, your car frame could decide it's time to become mulch. But hey, at least you got a story to tell your grandkids 100 times over. 32. King Charles. Six of France had the wild belief that he was made of glass. Actual glass. To avoid shattering, he wrapped himself in padded clothes and banned anyone from touching him. Picture a medieval king waddling around like a nervous vase while his knights tried to keep a straight face. This guy thought he was just one bad bump away from a full-blown existential crisis. 33. Saffron was so rare and expensive in ancient times that some rulers forbade its export to avoid triggering a spice famine. Still being one of the most expensive spices around, it was transported with serious protection. Wars and feuds resulted if the consignment went missing. Of course, this didn't stop greedy traders who smuggled it out by hiding it in their hair and clothes. Spices were the original underground black market products. 34. Louis XIV had a serious shoe obsession. His heels weren't just for height, they were a symbol of his royal power. He was a ruler more worried about his shoes than the actual governance of the state. He even passed a law that restricted high heels to the nobility. He was the true symbol of elevated status. 35. Diogenes of Sinope, one of the most famous Greek philosophers, decided that the best way to experience life was to live in a barrel. He didn't just live in a barrel though, he did everything in public, including bathing and eating. His logic? Why not live like a dog? And if you've ever thought public showers at the gym are awkward, try explaining that to a barrel-dwelling philosopher who calls out, "I am at home everywhere," while munching on an olive. 36. One ancient Athenian had the genius idea to wear sandals in the winter, stating that they improved circulation. Whether this was an early form of functional fashion or just a bad decision is still debated. Imagine walking through the snow with sandals, looking like a total hero while your toes slowly freeze into popsicles. 37. In ancient China, silk was used as a form of currency. Yes, you heard right, threads made from worm spit were more valuable than gold and silver. Silk was used to pay government officials and sometimes used as a tribute as well. Imagine showing off your wealth by flashing small silk threads instead of a wallet. Who knew caterpillars were history's most underappreciated bankers? 38. In the 1930s New Zealand, hard-working farmers faced the problem of exploding pants. All of a sudden, their trousers burst into flames. Thanks to a government-recommended weed killer, sodium chlorate, their clothes turned into walking fire hazards. Imagine working the fields, wiping your brow, and then, boom, your pants ignite. Forget hard work. These farmers were literally on fire. 39. A group of printing apprentices blamed cats for their misfortune. They were convinced that cats were the symbol of bad luck and witchcraft. So, to bring good luck, they killed all the cats they could get their hands on. The Great Cat Massacre of 18th century France is the most bizarre example of how to stage a protest. Their irrational fear of these furry agents of misfortune turned into one of history's strangest labor revolts. Apparently, workplace disputes back then didn't involve HR, just feline casualties. 40. Inca festivals weren't just about lively celebrations, they sometimes featured mummies. That's right, mummies of former rulers and important figures would be brought out like honored guests. Picture a parade or a wedding where the guests of honor are literally dead. They'd be dressed up, paraded around, and even consulted for advice. These mummies were considered to be full of ancient wisdom, so for the betterment of the living, consultation was taken from the dead. They might be dead right on some matters. 41. Vikings did not wear horned helmets. Sorry to destroy your childhood fantasy, but no evidence suggests that they wore horned helmets. Vikings were much too practical for such ridiculous headgear. The horned helmet was just a dramatic flourish created by 19th century artists. Can you imagine how impractical it would be to have horns flapping around during a battle? Who would like to go and pillage a village looking like a goat? 42. Emperor Caligula pet-pampered his horse Incitatus to an unimaginable degree. He gave Incitatus a marble stable and a golden feeding trough, and even hosted lavish dinner parties in the horse's honor. Guests had to sit through meals where the main attraction was a horse eating out of gold. If that wasn't enough, Caligula allegedly planned to make Incitatus a consul. Incitatus 1 and consul members 0. 43. In the 12th century BCE, ancient Egyptian tomb builders staged the first recorded labor strike. It was staged not over wages, but over rations of bread and beer. They straight up walked off the job and refused to work on Pharaoh's grand tomb until they were fed. Their message was clear: no bread and bear, so no pyramids. Even 3,000 years ago, kings knew you don't mess with lunch breaks. 44. The Great Wall's main purpose was to keep out invaders like the Mongols. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. The Mongols found ways around, over, or through the wall repeatedly. They could also bribe their way in. It's like installing the fanciest security system in the world, only to leave the back door wide open. Oops. 45. Great Fire of London of the 17th century had a gourmet tour around the metropolitan city. It kicked off in a bakery on Pudding Lane and miraculously stopped at Pie Corner. Seems like the fire had a taste for London's food scene, as if it was saying, stop eating so many puddings and pies or I'll burn your city down. 46. In Polynesian culture, cutting one's hair is a deeply symbolic act. Hair is viewed as a spiritual connection to one's ancestors in Hawaiian culture. It is believed that hair holds the essence of one's being, and cutting it can disconnect an individual from their spiritual roots. Interesting to think of a debate sparked by a haircut. 47. Tibetan monks have a fascinating tradition of wearing wigs made from yak hair during religious ceremonies. These wigs aren't just hairstyles, they're head-mounted works of art, styled so elaborately you'd think they were auditioning for a yak-inspired fashion show. They're also cumbersome, turning every ceremony into a spiritual and physical endurance test. It's not so practical, but definitely eye-catching. 48. In 1355, Oxford students sparked a two-day riot over bad wine at a local tavern. Apparently, their academic standards extended to their alcohol. Insults flew, punches followed, and by the end, over 60 people were dead. Talk about a wine tasting gone horribly wrong. Thanks to Yelp today, we have way fewer bad review brawls. 49. Portugal was one of the earliest European colonizers, but lagged behind everyone else when it came to letting go. They stubbornly clung to colonies like Mozambique and Angola well into the mid-20th century, leading to violent wars of independence. By the time Portugal finally left in 1975, their empire was in shambles, proving they were more like the clingy ex-colonial powers than a major player. 50. President John Quincy Adams allegedly kept an alligator in the White House's bathtub. It was a gift from Marquis de Lafayette and became a source of shock and amusement for guests. Imagine visiting the president and walking into a room only to be greeted by a reptile soaking in luxury. 51. In medieval Poland and Bulgaria, some graves were found containing skeletons with stakes through their hearts or large stones placed in their mouths. This wasn't a failed DIY project, it was an attempt to prevent suspected vampires from rising from the dead. Those burials must have been a hot topic for days. 52. After Oswald, the man accused of assassinating President John F. Kennedy, was exhumed in 1981, his original pine coffin was found in terrible condition. Auctioned off years later, the coffin caused a literal bidding war, eventually selling for over $87,000 in 2010. People will pay for anything, even a rotting box. 53. Neanderthals weren't as dumb as we know them to be. They crafted sophisticated spears and used them smartly and strategically. Some scientists even think they hunted in teams. Prehistoric version of SEAL Team 6. The minute difference is that the SEALs have bad boys to hunt down, and the Neanderthals had to hunt woolly rhinos. 54. Older cultures had their own way of turning boys into men. The cheese-stealing contest of the Spartans was a ritual in which young men attempted to steal cheese from the altar of Artemis Orthia while avoiding guards armed with whips. Winning got you honor and free cheese. Losers probably gained endurance. 55. In the late 1800s, people believed electricity could cure almost anything. Enter the bizarre electrotherapy belt, a wearable device that claims to treat impotence, back pain, and general laziness by shocking the wearer with small jolts of electricity. Instead of feeling energized, most people probably just got zapped into regret. 56. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, inventors were obsessed with monowheels, single-wheel vehicles powered by pedals, motors, or even steam. These vehicles looked futuristic, but were wildly impractical. Riders often struggled to control their speed and direction or not fall over. Thankfully, the monowheel trend rolled away into obscurity. 57. In the 17th century, people were so terrified of being buried alive that they rigged graves with bells. A string was attached to the deceased inside the coffin, so if they woke up, they could ring for help. Imagine being a graveyard worker and hearing a bell at midnight. Now that's real job stress. 58. Frederick II of the Holy Roman Empire was a medieval science enthusiast who conducted bizarre experiments. He reportedly raised children in isolation to study language development and even staged gruesome dissections to learn about anatomy. He also kept exotic animals in his court, including a giraffe. Because why not? 59. Ancient civilizations like the Chinese and Native Americans used smoke signals to send messages across long distances. A puff here and a puff there, and you got a message on the horizon. Of course, these messages were limited to things like danger or dinner's ready. No emojis, of course, but hey, it got the job done. And if the wind is wrong, your important message might look like somebody overcooked their food. 60. The Viking longships were the SUVs of their time. They were highly efficient. They could navigate both oceans and shallow rivers, equivalent to a technological marvel for their time. But you know, they look scary for the one who is watching them dock on their cost. 61. In ancient Mesopotamia, people spent years painstakingly weaving carpets specifically for sacrificial ceremonies, only to have them destroyed right after use. These intricate rugs were apparently the gods' version of single-use plastic. The artisan poured their heart and soul into a masterpiece, only to see a priest stomp on it and toss it into the sacrificial bonfire. Truly, a celestial thank you. 62. When forks arrived in Europe in the 11th century, they were deemed unnecessary and even sinful, as God had provided fingers for such tasks. An Italian bishop chastised a noblewoman for her arrogance in using one. Meanwhile, knives were perfectly acceptable. Looks like stabbing one's food carried divine approval. 63. The wheelbarrow was a Chinese invention. In 1st century China, someone had the genius idea to slap a wheel under a plank and create a wheelbarrow. Suddenly, one person could move a heavy load without needing a team of workers. It was simple, practical, and perfect for hauling everything from crops to let's be honest, probably a drunk friend or two. 64. Ancient Romans believed white lead-based ointments could cure everything from acne to scars. While the paste did give a pale, flawless look, it was also highly toxic and caused lead poisoning over time. The Romans literally died for their beauty routines. 65. The people of Yap Island in Micronesia used massive stone discs, some weighing several tons, as currency. Ownership was transferred through verbal agreement rather than physically moving the stone. If someone owed you money, they'd point to the stone and say, "That giant rock is yours now. Good luck spending it." 66. In many ancient societies, cows were a form of currency. In fact, the Latin word for money, pecunia, comes from pecus, meaning cattle. Wealthy individuals were essentially walking livestock banks, mooing their way to the top. 67. The Roman Emperor Nero lit his parades with human torches. When he threw a parade, he liked to light the night with human torches. He used Christians dipped in oil as flaming decorations during his infamous nighttime processions. This atrocity is widely recognized by historians, but one thing is clear as daylight: the emperor lit the night. 68. Infamously known for persecuting Christians, including using them as human torches to light his gardens. This atrocity is documented by the historian Tacitus in his Annals and is discussed in various historical analyses. 69. Ancient Roman terracotta oil lamps were economical, but had a tendency to crack or explode if overfilled with oil or handled roughly. You could have been sitting on a fine evening reading a scroll by lamplight and suddenly ambushed by flying shards of pottery. 70. In the Abbasid era, intricate brass oil lamps were crafted with secret compartments and hidden mechanisms. Some were so elaborate they seemed magical, inspiring tales like the famous Aladdin's lamp in later folklore. No genies included, though. 71. In ancient Persia, they had a punishment that was both terrifying and awkwardly simple. The condemned was forced to sit on a narrow wooden plank suspended over water. The twist? They had to maintain perfect balance or risk plunging into the water below, where drowning awaited. It was like an ancient version of Survivor, but the stakes were way higher, and no immunity idols to save you. 72. Back in the 19th century, Paris decided their sewer system was such a marvel of engineering that they turned it into a tourist attraction. Wealthy visitors actually paid for guided tours, gliding through tunnels on boats while sewage floated by like an unwelcome guest. Nothing says romantic getaway quite like a river cruise, but with the ambiance of a sewer. 73. Colonizing was not always fun and collecting stuff from people. Some colonies just disappeared in thin air. The lost colony of Roanoke is one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. In 1587, English settlers led by John White established a colony on Roanoke Island, modern-day North Carolina. White returned to England for supplies, but when he came back in 1590, the colony had vanished. 118 people gone without a trace. The only clue: the word Croatoan is carved into a wooden post, and CRO is on a tree nearby. That led the explorers nowhere. 74. Eating at someone's place did not always come with benefits. In the Middle Ages, people had to bring their own knives to meals because providing cutlery was not a part of hosting someone. The type of cutlery was also impacted by one's place in society. The fancier the knife, the higher your social status. Showing off personal eating utensils sounds a bit bizarre today. 75. Before they evolved into dining utensils, ancient chopsticks in China were used more like tweezers for cooking and grabbing food out of boiling pots. Early users probably discovered their culinary potential after accidentally eating with them. 76. In the 19th century, Victorians had elaborate egg holders made of silver or porcelain that looked more like sculptures than trays. Some were so fancy they came with individual egg thrones for each egg, because even breakfast needed a royal touch. 77. Sailors believed that piercing their ears with gold or silver earrings could improve their eyesight. Some thought the precious metals had magical properties, while others swore the pressure point on the earlobe enhanced vision. No word on whether pirates wore extra earrings for night vision. 78. Sailors were pioneers of tattoo culture, and their ink had symbolic meaning. A rooster and pig tattooed on their feet were believed to protect them from drowning because livestock survived shipwrecks by floating on debris. Logic may have been questionable, but the style was ahead of its time. 79. During the Crimean War, a goat named William Windsor, yes, he had a full name and status. He was adopted by the British Army. He rose to fame as the regimental mascot, and in a bizarre twist, even received official promotions. William once got demoted for eating a superior officer's hat, but he regained his rank after showing good behavior. 80. Victorian-era ice cream was no less than a health hazard. Ice cream was often churned with contaminated water or served in unwashed cups. Diseases like tuberculosis and cholera were widespread because of this. Customers were basically playing dessert roulette. Will it be delicious or will it be typhoid? The thrill of dessert never felt so life-threatening. 81. In the Middle Ages, poorly stored rye bread often grew a fungus called ergot, which could cause hallucinations, seizures, and even death. Some historians suggest that witchcraft accusations and bizarre behavior in small towns may have been caused by ergot poisoning. Many people were declared witches and executed only for the spread of some fungal spores. 82. In the 18th century, patients diagnosed with insanity were often strapped into straitjackets, not for their safety, but because it was believed to calm their violent behaviors. disorders. The concept of mental illness treatment was essentially restrict them until they feel better. If not, repeat it again until they do. It might not be as effective as people thought it was. 83. Humans used to do various bizarre practices in the name of medicine. During the Renaissance, it was common to grind up mummies into powder and use it as medicine. Mummy powder was sold as a cure for everything from bruises to poisonings. Healing was not guaranteed, but bloating probably was unavoidable. 84. The Mona Lisa is one of the most famous paintings in the world, but it has a strange quirk. She doesn't have eyebrows or eyelashes. It's unclear whether Da Vinci forgot them or if they were just in to shave them off back then. Either way, it's a little eyebrow-raising concern. 85. Ambitions are not easy to achieve. As we learned from Ferdinand Magellan's famous circumnavigation of the globe, it was doomed from the start. His fleet was plagued by mutiny, food shortages, and bad navigation. And to top it off, Magellan himself was killed in a battle with indigenous people in the Philippines. But at least his fleet completed the voyage in 3 years and came back to the same place, proving the roundness of Earth, but at what cost? 86. In 1947, engineers working on the Harvard Mark II computer found a moth stuck in a relay, causing the machine to malfunction. They removed the insect, taped it into their logbook, and humorously referred to it as a bug. This incident gave rise to the now common term debugging in computing. 87. Inhaling bad odors probably won't come to your mind while talking about the causes of disease. Victorians had different ideas. They believed in the miasma theory, thinking bad smells cause diseases. Instead of focusing on germs, they just masked odors with overwhelming perfumes. Imagine walking through London and instead of fresh air, it's a battlefield of sewage and lavender. 88. Apple's first logo wasn't a sleek, cool apple. It was a drawing of Isaac Newton chilling under an apple tree, designed in 1976 by Ronald Wayne. His great logo idea for the company was a Victorian-age depiction of Newton sitting under a tree. Nothing screams cutting-edge technology like a Victorian-style illustration of a guy who discovered gravity. Naturally, they swapped it out for something that didn't look like it belonged in a history textbook. Which one of these facts did you find the most stupid so far? Let us know in the comments. 89. In ancient times, the value of money was decided by gold, silver, or tea. Yeah, the most consumed beverage of our times was once used as currency. Compressed tea cakes, known as tea bricks, or tea money, were used as a medium of exchange, particularly in trade along the ancient Tea Horse Road in 19th century China. Tea bricks were portable and highly valued, making them a practical and widely accepted form of payment. Can tea buy a pack of pasta today? Probably not. 90. Wool is naturally flame resistant, which is just perfect if you're ever around fire but don't want to be a walking torch. It has a high ignition point, so it's less likely to catch fire compared to other fabrics. It won't stop an entire bonfire, but at least it won't immediately turn into ash if you're a little too close to the grill. 91. In ancient times, trepanation, which quite literally refers to drilling a hole in the skull, was performed to treat conditions like epilepsy, headaches, and mental illness. The belief was that letting evil spirits escape through the hole would cure the patient. Before the evil spirit, the person's soul must have left. It's questionable whether this was more of a medical solution or taking pleasure in one's misery. 92. During the Persian Wars, the Greeks won a decisive naval battle at Salamis by outmaneuvering the much larger Persian fleet in the narrow straits. The Greeks defeated the Persians, sinking about 300 Persian ships while losing only about 40 of their own. It was one of the earliest examples of using geography to your advantage. Size doesn't always win. 93. Ancient Egyptians were clearly polytheists. They prayed for many things to different gods. But the most bizarre part? Crepitus is the name of a god of flatulence. He was believed to control the magic of bodily functions. So yes, ancient Egyptians probably had a divine being to thank for that awkward moment after a spicy meal. 94. The ancient Maya practiced bloodletting, where they would pierce their tongues, genitals, and skin to offer their blood to the gods, just to make them less angry. Apparently, pleasing the gods didn't just involve animals. Humans got creative in making themselves a divine offering. Talk about an extreme form of devotion. 95. Egyptians had over 700 hieroglyphs. They are drawings of everyday objects to write and note things down. Talk about overcomplicating stuff. So, if you wanted to write something like, "I'm hungry," you'd probably have to draw a loaf of bread and a sad face. Talk about overcomplicating things. 96. Have you ever been terrified of a duck chasing you? This birdie will make them less terrifying. The Forus racidae, or terror birds, were flightless birds that stood up to 10 feet tall and could run at speeds of up to 40 miles per hour. With their massive beaks and carnivorous diet, they weren't exactly the type of birds you'd want to meet at the park. 97. Jesters were often the only people allowed to directly insult the king without fear of being executed. Imagine having the privilege to roast your boss daily without consequences. Kings had to laugh at their own expense, or the jester would keep the jokes coming until they did. Talk about a tough crowd. 98. Roman soldiers drank posca, a mix of watered-down vinegar, salt, and herbs. It wasn't exactly a refreshing beverage, but more like a survival drink. Think of it as an ancient version of energy drinks, except instead of giving you a boost, probably just made you want to question your life choices. 99. In medieval Europe, giving a gift could sometimes be more about causing chaos than kindness. A blunderbuss, which which is a type of early firearm, was given as a ceremonial gift, sometimes even at royal weddings. Because who wouldn't want to start their honeymoon with a noisy, chaotic bang? 100. While we think of pocket watches as a 16th century invention, the Egyptians created a rudimentary version over 3,000 years ago. It was a sundial that you could carry around. Not exactly a wristwatch, but hey, at least it wasn't just a stone sticking out of your pocket. Plus, it only worked during daylight. 101. In ancient civilizations, cotton was often considered a luxury item. Wearing cotton was so fancy that it was sometimes used as a social marker. If you were rocking cotton clothes, you were probably living your best life, while the rest of the world was still just trying to figure out how to make clothes that didn't scratch. Cotton in all its fluffy glory went from a luxury material to a household staple. That's it for your daily weekly dose of 101 facts. What was your favorite fact? Let us know in the comments. While you're at it, subscribe to see more videos like this. Till next time, the useless guy.